Welcome to Resilience Gone Wild. We just had the most awesome conversation with Andy Dehart from Loggerhead Marinelife Center around sea turtles and not making mistakes because we learn from them. And we had this special bond between Andy and Kai that he's going to share, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, first, congrats, Jessica. You got here. It's our inaugural interview episode. You and I have been working our butts off for, I think, like 6 months, getting all this information together. And
such fun, by the way.
Yeah, and all that hard work up front allows us just to have fun at these interviews, right? And that's exactly what it was. So again, I had my wrap it up ready to go, but I couldn't drop it till like 45 minutes in. So, but I think this is another example of like, oh, hey, here's my friend Andy. You keep it so casual, and then you start reading his resume. I'm not going to spoil it, but Andy is about as deep and as passionate and is about as relevant in this world, I think, as someone can get, including mentions in USA Today, the Discovery Channel, the aquariums he's worked on, which, through the interview discovered that he worked at the Omaha Henry Dorley Zoo, the opening of that, where I'm from Nebraska, and I fell in love with aquatic life walking through that aquarium. And to know that I probably saw Andy scuba diving with a tiger shark.
Oh my God, that's right.
As a 8 or 9-year-old walking through there, just
going,
really,
oh my God, there's a guy in the tank with that big shark.
Well, and as we'll see, he has this beautiful story about this tiger shark that he got there. And it's like, it's very cool. And again, congratulations. And yeah, what other emotions are you feeling right now before we get to the interview?
I'm just on such a high. Like, it's so much fun to have these conversations with people who are so passionate and also so inspiring and have brilliant, important things to say about both the world of nature they live in and what they've learned about becoming more resilient themselves from witnessing the world of nature. So
yeah, and I think for me, a reminder that the doom and gloom is there. But there is a message of hope, and Andy really did bring that. And our effort to be involved can have an impact. And you'll hear a story about how they're literally applying antibiotic paste to coral reef, I believe, to help stop what's happening as they discover what is happening. And it's like the effort that it just takes for people and volunteers is just so huge. So
you can just feel the love. You can feel the passion. You can feel the love. It's a beautiful thing. You can feel the
love. It's a very beautiful thing. And yeah, from Alaska to Florida, you're going to hear it all. But so we won't spoil any more. And should we get to the interview?
Awesome. Looking forward to it.
All right. Enjoy, everybody.
Welcome, Andy, to Resilience Gone Wild. I am so excited to be here chatting with you about ocean conservation, sea turtles, and our resilience lesson about throwing out the idea of making mistakes and instead owning our decisions and learning from them. So welcome, Andy, and we would love to hear more from you about your work and your passions and whatever else you'd like to share.
Thanks for having me, Jessica. It's always nice to talk to you, whether it be this way or on campus. Yeah, it's, obviously for me, I've had as you could tell by my probably over-enlarged bio, I've had a pretty crazy route to where I'm at right now, going from shark biologist to turtle hospital CEO has been a wild journey. Those two things don't always play nice together, but it's
that's such a funny thing.
I think resilience is certainly part of that, and I do think this podcast is right in line with something that's very true: is that the nature is resilient, the human beings can be resilient, and I think we can look to nature to find those lessons.
Yeah, you brought up something I hadn't thought of that, which is funny that sharks are pretty much the only major consumer of large sea turtles. I mean, the babies are at risk all the time, but yeah, that's such an interesting, complex contrast.
Yeah, it's actually even more unique in the fact that probably my number one specialty is with tiger sharks, which is the one species of shark that is known to feed on sea turtles regularly. They've adapted really unique strategies for how to feed on sea turtles, including their teeth shape, how they hunt, and even how they get rid of sea turtle shells at the end of this process. So
wow, I haven't heard of that one. Can you share that? Because that's the one piece I haven't heard.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's, obviously, as you might imagine, if you feed on sea turtles, getting rid of the shells not a fun part. So
yeah, I mean, just to tell people, like sea turtles can be 300, 400, 500 pounds in the so.
So they actually have an adaptive strategy, tiger sharks do, where they can evert their stomach out their mouth and do the hokey pokey and shake all the turtle shells out. And then they suck back in their stomach across those razor sharp teeth, and hopefully they don't perforate anything. So, not that they don't do that every time, but it is a unique adaptive strategy.
That's incredible. So I have to say, I've seen a cool video that I've shared with Loggerhead guests just to sort of give them some ease when they see the nurse sharks, which are clearly, not enemies of the turtle, but about a turtle that escapes into the reef because the sharks can't go into super shallow water. And it's so inspiring to see the way turtles actually, are able to survive a lot of shark attacks. I don't know if you want to, you probably have a lot more insight into that than I do.
Yeah, the other adaptive strategy, sharks are predominantly ambush predators, so they do use sneak attack methods or sneak bite. Everybody uses the term shark attack. I hate that term, like they're premeditated, serial killers. But in the wild, they do need to eat. Just like anything else in the ocean, they have a role and a very important role to play in the ecosystem, just as sea turtles do. But so one of the strategies that sea turtles have is to actually barrel roll like a fighter plane around the sea turtle, around the shark's head, keeping the widest part of the shell towards the shark. Turtles can do that hopefully long enough to get to, like you mentioned, the reef or some rocks to get some structure to hide in.
Yeah, we're going to post a bunch of those videos and info on the show notes, so check them out if you want to see more. We won't post any of a shark eating and extruding, or whatever the right word is, its stomach to get rid of the shell, I promise, but you can probably look that up. It's really fun to watch them spin around the shark and be able to maneuver. Like, you wouldn't think that, sea life is so incredible, watching what they're capable of physically, in the wild. Like, I think we really underappreciate the maneuverability and agility of.
Yeah, I think one of the things that teaches you very quickly is if you try to collect fish with a net. I think one of my jobs has been to be able to kind of in a very smart, very conservation aware way actively collect fish for public aquariums when in my prior roles, being able to do that in a very sustainable way, a very eco-conscious way. But nothing will teach you better that fish are really good at evading things than trying to catch them with a vinyl net when you're kind of ungainly, you're not very fast underwater. It's not our element. So you actually have to use your most powerful muscle, which is your brain, which is in fact much bigger than our fish brain. So you got to use the human's ability to outthink a fish rather than outswim it, because you won't catch it that way.
Yeah, it's a really important lesson. Use what our superpowers are, not what we'd like them to be. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. What comes up for me around the story of the shark and the turtle being in the same space is, the turtle goes out to eat in the deeper water. It can't only, I guess, live in the reef where they're safer. And this whole, sense of being aware of your environment, but having to take risks, gets to this whole beautiful story of not making a mistake. Like, you do the best you can in that moment. And that's what the whole, story of the balance of nature is, right? Like, we have to take risks. Right. So is anything, got a good story for us around that?
Yeah. I think it's a two-part lesson. One, you have to take risks. But I think every day is a little risky. So, I think you don't, everybody kind of thinks about sea turtles and what they eat. A lot of people don't realize that every species of turtle has a very different diet. The leatherbacks, which are the biggest sea turtle species, they eat almost their weight per day in jellyfish, or I call them jellies because they're not fish. So, this is the largest species of turtle that's been adapted to eat this thing that's like a sack of jam. And they eat a lot of those. They eat them in the very deep ocean pelagic waters. So there's not a ton of predators, but you do talk about the three that are more reef dwelling species, the green, the loggerhead, and the hawksbills. When they forage, the loggerheads eat crabs and lobsters. The green sea turtles eat seagrass, and the hawksbills eat sponge almost predominantly. So I think, each of these has adapted their own strategy for how to hunt and where that's going to dictate that they live. But Certainly going out feeding and paying attention to where food is a risky endeavor for these things. I think as humans, I can look at my own career and where I took the biggest risks are where the biggest rewards were. And I think, for me, those two life lessons were most played out. As a budding marine biologist, I started at the aquarium in Baltimore when I was 15, the National Aquarium. My first opportunity to do a full-time job was at the Henry Doorly Zoo in Omaha, Nebraska. Both my parents grew up in Nebraska at the age of 17. As you mentioned, my dad joined the Navy to get out of Nebraska as quickly as he could. So I think when I told my parents I was going to go as a budding marine biology to Nebraska, they were trying to wave me off that path as hard and as fast as they could. But this was back, dating myself a little bit. This was back in 1995. This was long before a lot of the aquariums that people know today or have been opened. So there was not a lot of aquariums opening. And for me, it was a chance to go to help build an aquarium, which was a rare occasion. And then also I was able to take care of the big shark exhibit there and be the primary aquarist there. So wow. I think that was a risk. I was there for about 4 years, came back to the aquarium in Baltimore. And then I think the other risk that I took was when I was at the aquarium in Baltimore, the National Aquarium, there was another aquarium that was not affiliated, the National Aquarium in Washington, D.C., in the basement of the Commerce Building, and arguably the worst aquarium in probably the country, if not the world.
Well, I mean, the basement of the Commerce Museum sort of says that, right?
Yeah, we changed that to the lower level of the Commerce Building once we renovated it. But, I think when we took it over, it was the basement of the Commerce Building. It was dark. It was dingy. We renovated 60 out of 65 exhibits with a NOAA grant and really kind of turned that space around. We were able to focus that aquarium on America's aquatic treasures. Wow. People come to D.C. for a pilgrimage to see everything about our nation. Yeah. So, I think everybody was saying, you're crazy. And in fact, I went down to do the first survey of the space for National Aquarium and was asked my opinion. I said, run for the hills.
Run back to Nebraska.
Yeah, they said, don't run. They said, we're not going to run for the hills. We're going to take it over. And I said, well, I'll go down and help be part of the renovation. We had some amazing team members that we inherited when we took over that facility. And I was down there for 7 years. Ultimately, that facility closed. Just, the whole Commerce Building was being renovated. It wasn't a great space for it size-wise. But, I think for me, that was probably the riskiest career move I made. But ultimately, I think taught me, number one, a lesson. And, we had an amazing executive director there that taught me a lot about leadership. Mm. So I think to me, it was, there's no reward without risk.
Yeah, I mean, the team that you've built, you remind me of the team that you've built at Loggerhead, and you as a leader there is just so awe-inspiring to see the passion and the commitment and the respect that everyone has for each other and everyone has for you and for all the visitors and all the great work that's done. And thinking about the Nebraska aquarium, I mean, these people have probably, most of them had never been to the ocean, right? And so, the idea of exposing people to the beauty and importance of our oceans is kind of mind-blowing. And at Loggerhead, even though we're on the water and it's only a few miles, to get there from the communities that are just off the water, most of those kids have never been to the ocean and know nothing about it. So watching these school groups come in and learn and be so beautifully connected to the work that Loggerhead does about both ocean conservation and, exploring what the brilliance of marine life is.
Sorry, guys, I got to jump in. I've been chomping at the bit. I'm from Nebraska.
Oh.
And
awesome.
I grew up going to the Omaha Henry Doorly Zoo. Yeah. I fell in love with the ocean because of that aquarium.
That's awesome.
And here I am on the other side. And Andy, you played a role in that. And Jessica, to your point, it is so incredible because we don't have access to the oceans. And Guy, I had to jump in and let you know that you had a profound impact on my childhood, which is crazy.
That's so
what
cool.
are the odds, right? Like that this was
small world.
All right, I'll let you get back to it.
That's awesome.
Thank you. It's interesting, though, because, wait, Kai, stay on for a sec. I was at the Chicago Shed Aquarium this weekend. Yeah, but I was, really awed by the combination of local sea life that
Yep.
they highlight, and the conversations that were going on around me, where parents, a lot of fathers, were showing their kids and talking about, these different breeds of fish in like really knowledgeable ways. I mean,
Yep.
this is a community that does know its local waterways and does have a relationship with them. And then they go to the ocean part and see the sharks and the turtles, and it's like a completely different world that that opens their eyes up and their imaginations up. It's this, being off the coast is really cool to bring both of that, like your local Americana world of marine life and ocean. I mean, marine life and fish. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that was a big choice for me going to Nebraska. Is these are people that will probably in their lifetime not ever snorkel with sharks. They're not going to snorkel with stingrays. They're not going to see a parrotfish. So for me, that was also part of the decision. Also, I was 22 years old, so I was just looking for a job. I mean, I think that's part of it, and a great job. But I think it also weighed into my decision to help open the aquarium in Toronto. Ripley's Aquariums is actually part of Ripley's, believe it or not, which is over 100-year-old brand. Most people are not aware they actually have 3 world-class aquariums: one in Myrtle Beach, one in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, and one and I got to open the one in Toronto, which was the newest one. But very similar, I think that's a fairly standard thing within a lot of aquariums. Monterey Bay Aquarium really kind of kicked off that model of let's focus on the local waterways in an aquarium. Because even though you're at the beach or you're at the coast, most people are not engaging below the surface of the water. So Monterey Bay really, I think, knocked it out of the park with that local ecosystem aquarium. But since that time, there's a lot of folks, even though the aquarium in Baltimore, we had a Maryland Chesapeake Bay gallery. When I opened the aquarium in Toronto, I think one of our more popular galleries was the Canadian Waters Gallery. And to your point, we had parents and kids saying, hey, that's a walleye. I caught that at the lake. I didn't know what they looked like underwater. So I think that was a really cool element of bringing that. And I think it also, in Toronto, we use that as the first gallery, I think, to open conversations. And then you leave there and then you walk down this ramp and it's a 20-foot coral, kelp forest like you'd find in British Columbia. So I think then you dump out into what we called our rainbow reef, which is our tropical Pacific. You go from browns and greens and oranges to every color of the rainbow. So I think, but by that point in time, you've seen the familiar and now it's time to see the otherworldly. So I think that's a really great experience. And I think to get to your point about the kids at Loggerhead, it is why we have aquariums here. We prior to our expansion in 2022, we had 2 or 3 little small aquariums, but we wanted to add a much larger aquarium component for a couple reasons. We are an active sea turtle hospital. We only keep turtles long enough to get them rehabilitated and back into the ocean. That's our mission. That's our goal. Our head veterinarian is an absolute dynamic, amazingly talented veterinarian, and she has a very treat 'em and street 'em mentality, as I call it. Get them treated, get them back in the surf and out. So on any given day here at Loggerhead Marine Life Center, we might have 5 turtles. We might have 22 turtles. But that's why one of the reasons we wanted aquariums as well. We have a large jelly aquarium. We've got a coral reef aquarium, mangrove and Gulf Stream. And the reason that is to show the habitat that these turtles live in, because just focusing our conservation efforts on turtles is not going to help unless we help the ecosystem. And as I mentioned, they all have very different foods. So seagrass beds are incredibly important to green sea turtles because of the phosphates and the fertilizer in the water. We're seeing seagrass die off at an alarming rate. It's affecting sea turtles and manatees. The coral reefs are struggling due to temperature in the oceans and the disease called stony coral tissue loss disease. And then we also know that, so that's affecting sponge and coral reefs and then all the animals that live on those, the crabs, the lobsters that the loggerheads live in. So I think it was important for us to show the habitat side of things, not just the sea turtle thing.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say that I grew up in Manhattan, total city kid, didn't really get exposed to, didn't get exposed to the ocean and marine life and nature the way, I lived across from Central Park, but it wasn't, and I went to the zoo all the time, but those were the days where the cages in the zoo were right. It was great to be a kid because the elephant was like this far from me, right? But not so good for the elephants. And I moved into the beach with no expectations. I had no idea that our area was both the densest sea turtle nesting place in the world, only maybe after someplace in the Middle East. And that we were right next to the Gulf Stream, and that the snorkeling and scuba diving, walking distance from where I lived, was like one of the best also. So I went over to a Loggerhead to volunteer because I fell in love with the turtles. And the spot that was open, because it was just opening, were the aquariums. So I knew nothing. I walked in and I got trained by, on site by these amazing volunteers who are passionate, past, marine biologists, and learned these incredible stories of nature and nature's conservation and the balance of nature. And I learned about the parrotfish, which is literally how this all started, where it's like these turtles have a role. They eat the sponges because they need to have a balance or else they'll overgrow. So we need to protect turtles. We need to protect the ocean so that we can protect turtles, so that they can eat the sponges, so that they can eat the jellies so they don't overtake and all that. And the parrotfish who eats, and there's an episode that's coming up about it, that the parrotfish that eats its favorite food of algae and cleans the coral out and then makes sand. Crazy stories of the importance that we just totally underestimate and don't think about. So, it changed my life to, hear these stories. That's one of the main reason I'm offering them back to people and getting people like you on who have been living in this world literally and have so much important stuff to offer us. So thank you for the work you do and all that you're bringing. And none of it seems like you could ever look at it as a mistake, as you said, in terms of learning, right? Every risk you took, every choice you made, putting the nurse sharks in and everybody going, isn't there enough space for these nurse sharks in there? Aren't they? And you'll walk by and be like, you know what? I'm the shark guy. I know how much space they need. I promise you they're happy there. So, this whole.
Yeah, I think obviously there's been a lot more focus as there should have been. You mentioned the old Bronx Zoo. The AZA is an organization that's leading kind of this global change in how people and animals interact. And even, CITES and other organizations have actually put out a lot of press lately that say, without zoos, aquariums, and botanical gardens, there are uncounted numbers of species that would probably be extinct, whether that be the golden lion tamarin, whether that be the pillar coral. These are what organizations, although we're not part of AZA because we're more of a sea turtle rehabilitation hospital than we are a major public aquarium, but all these organizations are focused on conservation. We don't. The staff that work there are not driving BMWs. These are our animal care staff that are dedicated because they're passionate about not just working with animals, but working with animals in a way that protects them for the long haul. And I think for me, it's really looking at, especially what we see with what's happening now in the polar regions of our country and in our world of, if people had never seen a polar bear before or a walrus before, would people really care if they disappeared? So I think that plays a big role in the mission of zoos and aquariums and botanical gardens and nature centers and science centers, is having that explanation, having that experience. Because, for me, I was very lucky. I saw my first shark at age 4 or 5 snorkeling with my dad. I learned how to snorkel, and then I was in Big Pine Key and snorkeling on Lou Key with my dad. Saw a 6-foot Caribbean reef shark. That's a bathing suit soiling experience when you're 5 years old. I'm not sure if literally or figuratively, but I think it's quite an experience at 5 to see a shark that's bigger than you are. Especially in the late 70s when Jaws is at its peak.
Right. So, yeah. And they're bringing it back, which is not a good thing. I don't think.
So I think, that to me was foundational. And I think aquariums can play that same role. So I see the role of the Loggerhead Marine Life Center is that first glimpse of inspiration. As you mentioned, there are a lot of kids around here that come to our school groups. One of the main draws for me to come to Loggerhead was that free access. So we are a no admission facility. We take donations at the door. We have what's called the Gordon Gray Circle of 100. It's our highest level of donors that do 5,000 a year annually towards our annual fund. We are in a very philanthropic place in North Palm Beach County. We have some absolutely truly amazing, very generous donors that donate on our behalf, but we also get a lot in door donations. Mm-hmm. And the other recipe to our success is we have a boutique gift store. Yeah.
So it's such a good shop, I have to say.
And you know, we have an amazing buyer who's been here 27 years. She's been a critical part of the success of Loggerhead. So it is this blend of private and foundation giving and retail success, just not through tickets. And what I love about that is it allows kids from Palm Beach County and Martin County and Broward County that would not normally get the chance to come to the beach, even though there's free parking, free access. We know that. When I was down in Miami at Frost Science, we had kids that lived 5 miles away from Frost Science that had never been to the beach because parking at the beach was $40, and that's well out of reach for certain families. So I think the goal of most zoos, aquariums, Palm Beach County is blessed with a number of amazing animal operations, from Bush Wildlife to Palm Beach Zoo. Cox Science is building an aquarium. So Palm Beach County just really is truly rich with animal experiences. So I think getting those kids to have that first spark, and maybe that starts a conversation, they take one step up the conservation ladder.
Yeah, actually, I've been inspired by, there's a lot of interns around from the high school programs that they actually have some marine science programs. And these kids are so inspiring, like to see the next generation of kids who care about, and because they've been connected to the ocean for years, having grown up there. So it's just it's inspiring to be around a multi-generational, multi-socioeconomic sort of experience in a very bubble sort of county, right? or area. And that nature can bring it all together, right? Like the awe, the lessons, the beauty, the resilience, like all of it. So the fact that we're saving species from extinction, which is very much a reality, by having these formal aquariums and zoos and all the rest, is something that we need to get the message out more, right? Like, because we live on donors, we live on philanthropy. So,
correct. Yeah, I think too. There, if I read my Apple News every morning, and I think there's a lot of doom and gloom in there. I think we certainly have to be paying attention to what's happening on the planet. From fossil fuels to fertilizers to you name it. The world does not seem like a rosy place. I've got two kids, 17 and 14. They have climate and planet anxiety of what's going to be facing me when I'm your age, Dad. If this is what's happening now. And in my lifetime, as I said, I my first snorkel in Florida was the Lou Key in Big Pine Key. And that reef does not look the same as it did when I started in 1979, 1980. That is a very different place than it was when I was a kid, and I will 100% say not for the better. So I think those that doubt environmental degradation, I can tell you firsthand it's happening, and it's happening because of heat stress. It's happening because of pollution. It's happening because of chemicals. All of those are real things. And, I think it's okay to kind of doubt the source and question the source. As scientists, we should be questioning why this is happening. But I think for me, we have to balance that doom and gloom and not add to it. So I think for me, this is a place of hope for sea turtles.
Yeah.
So I think, yes, we're seeing human-induced injuries. We're seeing entrapment in monofilament. We're seeing ingestion of plastic. We're seeing hits by boats. But at the same time, when we do a beach release to 2,000 people and the turtle crawls down the beach and heads back into the ocean where it's supposed to be, I think those are uplifting and inspiring stories that we need to balance those. Another great story, I think, of resilience is coral reefs. We're hearing, last year was absolutely detrimental to Florida's coral reef. We have two ongoing things going on. There's a stony coral tissue loss disease, which scientists are still trying to figure out. We've worked a lot with that. But what we found from a resilience standpoint, if humans get engaged, we can put antibiotic paste on certain corals and stop the progression of the disease. It's a very labor intensive thing. We've also last summer had the most extreme heat that we've ever had. We had aquariums and government agencies working around the country, not just around Florida, pulling sensitive corals out, like the pillar coral, which is a iconic species that's almost near extinction in Florida, pulling those out of the ocean, holding them until water temperatures went down and the disease pathway makes its course, to hopefully go back and restore those. And people like Florida Aquarium, Frost Science, and others, SeaWorld, are working very closely on that issue. So, I think those are the things that give me hope. And I think that's why I think one of our roles at Loggerhead is to tell the hope stories, not just, hey, you got to, people only want to hear so often how much they need to change their behaviors. Yeah. If you can tell them why, and you can show them a positive case on, hey, this is where your plastic ended up, or this is, why you need to take your fishing line away from the pier and put it in one of the disposable containers, or even better, the recycling containers. And this is what it will help. This is a hope story, not a feel bad story.
Beautiful. Such a beautiful, important statement. So I hope everybody will rewind and listen to that again. And it reminds me, Andy, of the decision you made to go to Nebraska as a kid. And you said, and it seems like your parents were like, this is going to be a mistake, that whole construct of mistake. And just the commitment that the people in the world of these, what I call purpose-driven, not, and as you said, they're not doing this to get rich. Nobody's doing this to get rich. And it's actually the other way. Like, it's that there's this real imbalance, I believe, in the rewards that people who follow their passions to help our world are drastically under-rewarded. And it makes it really hard to feel like, are you sure you're not making a mistake by going into purpose-driven versus profit-driven? So, the people, I remember the conversation we were having in our lunch chat or our snack chat up on the deck in the spring. I think I asked you what a dream would be and, what a next beautiful thing to happen. You said something about you would love to have some extra cash to just give your team, a bonus so that they could get a little relief from the financial pressure they're all living on. So I'm not using your words exactly, but that was the gist that I heard. So can you talk a little bit about, the choices that the people who commit to this world of hope for reversing what happened in the 70s and 80s, trying to recover from it, and what they really deserve, what you all really deserve?
I mean, for me, I'm a biologist at heart, so I don't think anybody deserves anything. I think you got to work incredibly hard for whatever you want in life. I don't necessarily believe anybody's owed anything.
That's very fair. I love that. Yeah.
But I think it's unfair to also say that folks that are in financial for financial gain, I mean, that's just as lofty a pursuit. And I look at inventors that invent things because they want to get a patent to make a lot of money. Ultimately, they end up changing the world for the better. I mean, look at the guy that invented the intermittent wipers that decades, 40
love my intermittent wipers.
Yeah, 40 years later, he finally got a payoff after fighting all the car companies. And I mean, I think that there's those tales of work and pressure and consistency. I think that's a great story. The guy that designed that ended up eventually making millions of dollars, but it took a long haul. I also think successful business people in the business world are part of what helps us do what we do. Because if you don't have if you don't have the folks that have the generous wealth to give away, we don't operate. So I think it's a yin and a yang. I do know
balance, just like the shark versus the turtle, right? Like everybody's in balance.
So I think, I think whether you're in humanitarian work, feeding homeless, we've got so many great organizations that are doing humanitarian work in Palm Beach County as well, from, the Ark to El Sol. I mean, I think there's some amazing places that are focused on the human side, but I think there is, certainly a subset of people that are pulled to the nature aspect, whether that be national parks, land stuff, furry raccoons, or scaly sea turtles. But I think it is important for people to know, our animals eat better than even I do. I'm the CEO, and our animals get a better food budget than I use on a monthly basis.
Lobster sometimes too.
Yeah,
that
lobster's oftentimes on the menu. So I think it's understanding that these people are doing this for their passion. I think there was a time period where, and there still are, there's critics of zoos and aquariums, and that's the best part about America. They're able to be critics if they want to be critics, but I would just challenge that to say that most of the people in that business are not in it to make money. They're not in it. And even the organizations, most of them are 501c3 nonprofit organizations. And that money, like it does here at Loggerhead, goes right back into the organization. If we want to build a new program, renovate a facility, operating a campus this large, literally, less than a block from the beach, that salt water tears apart our HVAC units. It tears apart our vehicles. So the annual upkeep for our facility is quite large. Anybody who knows the Florida insurance market knows that our building insurance is quite expensive for Loggerhead. So I think it's having people fully understand what a 501c3 is and where that money can go. But yeah, ultimately, those folks that choose to work for us do choose, to take a passion job, not a profit job. And I think getting started in the aquarium business, the nature center business, the museum business, most entry level people either have a significant other, a roommate, or a second job. And,
or all of them.
And when I was in Omaha, I had all of them and probably gave some plasma somewhere along the line too. So, I think so for me, I guess probably because I'll never forget where I started, is just trying to say, okay, our team is killing it. They're doing amazing work. Last year we had the most attendance we've ever had. We had the most sea turtle patients we've ever had and released. We had our highest nesting numbers. So our research team that's out all night, they're coming in at 6 a.m. while the next team's going out to go look at the sea turtle nests. So I think these are very passionate people working long hours, working hard hours. That, to me, no matter what we're doing, it really is the team that makes it worthwhile. And I think if you talk to the bush wildlife staff, they would say the same thing. It's
absolutely. Yep. They're slotted to come do one of these.
I think it's a common thread among environmentally serving organizations is you have passionate people. And for me, if I had a giant wad of cash, what would I do with it? Aside from some building improvements, I think, rewarding our staff that have worked really hard.
Yeah, this it's interesting because I think this probably happens every generation, but I'm witnessing it as a parent of kind of kids in the new generation in their 20s, that there's this passion for and pressure from us older generation to fix and heal and take care of our planet. Mm-hmm. And there's this huge sense of hope that it's going to happen. We've turned a corner. We're worrying, and there's no negative for many people about caring about our world versus caring about just profit. But you've really inspired me in the times I've heard you speak about how they can go together. Like we can, we need to have purpose-driven, I'm not going to call them nonprofit, purpose-driven organizations that are sustainable. Mm-hmm. That between all of the forms of funding, and that should be something we're proud of, as opposed to we should suffer if we follow our passions. So,
right. I think that's also probably a perception on nonprofits that we don't always run as a shrewd business,
right?
Because the profit is really the only way you really sharpen that pencil. But I think what's been interesting for me is always looking at even on the animal side is how do you maximize your budget? How do you get more with less? I think that's it. It's important to understand that in the animal world, I will never cut corners. It's not like, hey, let's reuse that surgery cause, or let's skimp on the animal food, right? But there are some non starter issues that we're not going to look there for budget relieving things, but there are ways to do things better. One of those is training your staff. We have an amazing life support team here. When something breaks, our team is trained to fix it.
It's amazing to watch, like in a second, and they know what they're doing and they swoop in and fix crazy
absolutely
stuff.
But every time we do that, we're saving $10,000-$40,000 from bringing an outside contractor in to do it for us. So I think it's capacity building. I think at the end of the day, trying to run your nonprofit with as tight of margins as you can, a for-profit entity, is not a bad thing. It just allows you to do more. And then if you're successful, then you can put that money back into a project or a renovation or your staff.
And your lesson that you just offered us is incredibly valid and important for us as individuals, right? Like, figure out the stuff that's most important. Don't skimp on it. Invest in yourself, and then figure out how to, raise your whole capacity to live life stronger and more resiliently. So, thank you for that explanation of how we should all be living, not just how an organization that does good work should be living.
Yeah, it's funny because I'm a diehard outdoor enthusiast. I've camped for 5 weeks in Alaska on a shark assignment, and I was just camping up. I went up to see my old neighborhood in Toronto, and we went up to Algonquin Park, which is one of my favorite places in the world. It's north of Toronto, and all the buddies I was with had not to knock it, but cheaper, Walmart tents, and it rained for 2 days. They always joke me at me because I've got the nicest camping gear. I'm like, well, when you're doing 5 weeks in Alaska, I'll skimp on food, but I'm not going to skimp on a tent. So I think it is. It's spend the resources, whether those resources are time, energy, or money, in the things that matter, that are going to keep the rain off your back, and then look at where you can cut costs to go a little bit further. And I think that's what nonprofits need to do.
Yeah. And to our resilience lesson connected to the sea turtles and false crawls, of not making mistakes and doing the best we can with the information we have and the resources we have, and the energy that we have. Like, those people who camped with you didn't know any better, right? So they didn't make a mistake buying those tents. They did the best they could because that was the information they had. And now that they've experienced you and your tent and you're not getting wet for 2 days, they will make a different decision. But it wasn't a mistake to make the other one. So
I think, they're used to summer camping in Canada, which never rains. So they made the best decision at the time. But it is funny because I think mistakes are learning lessons in themselves. When I look back at my career, although I think I've had the most career gain by taking risks, where I've probably learned the most is when I made mistakes.
Yeah.
Whether that be in how I managed, how I led, function I did, a valve I forgot to turn off and flooded the floor. I think for me, that's important here at Loggerhead, is as long as it doesn't involve a ton of wasted revenue, and as long as it doesn't affect animal or human safety, I think mistakes have to be part of your learning experience at work. And they certainly, while I think a sea turtle false crawl is not a mistake, they are certainly seeing cues, whether that be people or light or the wrong grain sand of we'll never fully know what causes that. But, there could be conditions like, oh, wow, this beach is too hot, or this beach has the wrong sand, or that light over there is bothering me, or that there's a dog that I can hear. Yeah. I think there's a lot of things, and while not a mistake, it's a learning lesson.
100%. Yeah. Important for us to remember that even if we, call it a learning lesson, that we actually do learn from it and not beat ourselves up, that it was a mistake also. Like, just be able to just shut down the negative thinking and see it as opportunity. And what can I do? I can put a sign up that says, don't leave this on. Like, this can leak overnight, or whatever it is. Like, we keep learning how to make our lives a little bit better if we stop and process that and don't beat ourselves up. So that's, a big part of the lesson.
Yeah, I'd be lying if I said I didn't make the same mistake twice.
Okay, yeah. But you probably didn't make it 3 times, right?
Hopefully you don't do that too often.
Right. 3 strikes and you're out. So, Andy, this has been unbelievably awesome for me to be in this conversation with you. Thank you so much. I would love if you just give us one like really cool little anecdote of your favorite something that you love, a story you love to share, just to sort of wrap us up, and then tell us what you're looking to do going forward that's in your vision and in your planning.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think in your notes, you'd asked me a couple special animal moments. I think for me, one of those is at the aquarium in Nebraska, the Enter Zoo. We were one of the few aquariums that's ever tried to maintain a tiger shark, not a sand tiger shark, but a tiger shark. And we did that successfly for long.
In its own tank, I imagine.
It was in an aquarium with other shark species and coral reef fishes. But she did not transport very well. So I ended up pushing her for about 5 hours to keep her swimming and breathing.
So you were in the water with her?
Yeah, in the water with her for 5 hours, just pushing. And I think somewhere along that line, she bonded, which would not be something I would have predicted for a shark. I mean, I think most people think sharks are fairly low intelligence, but they actually are quite smart. So whenever I would get in that aquarium after that, she would swim down the tunnel and give me a high five with her fin on my forehead. Oh my God. Which is, when you're dealing with when you look at the numbers, it's probably the third most dangerous shark, but I think it's all relative. So I think, for me, that was a really special memory that these sharks are really capable of learning, and deeper than just because we train sharks a lot in the aquarium industry to go to colored or shaped targets. They learn that behavior fairly quickly with positive rewards for food. You can stop that behavior and they'll come back to it if you resume it like a month, 2 months later, which means they can retain information as well. So I think that was kind of a cool aha moment that you can't just be thinking of the biological needs of an animal. You have to be thinking of the emotional and mental needs of the animal, which is why, in our sea turtle hospital holding tanks here at Loggerhead, we actually put what look like jungle gyms in the tanks made of PVC and pipe. And that's so that the turtles, while they're here for the short window of time that they're here, have something to interact with. Can I swim through that? Can I go under it? Can I move around it? We mix those up all the time, and that's very deliberate. And then I think the other thing for me, just from transitioning from sharks to turtles, I've always worked with turtles in the aquarium setting. I've always loved sea turtles. But I think when I started, I was like, oh man, here comes the shark guy to the turtle hospital. How's he going to fit in? But I think to your point, it's this resiliency. It's this having these experiences that start building that emotional connection. I was already emotionally connected to sea turtles, but my brand was always the shark guy. So as soon as I got here, I started doing the hatchling releases. I went out with the research team the first summer that I was here. So I got to watch a loggerhead lay her eggs, just amazing stuff. And then actually finally this summer, I was able to get out when they did the leatherback research. And
that's crazy cool.
I was out with a 950-pound leatherback named Emerald, and she was nesting. They did all the biometrics that they do. They took blood, and the research team said, hey, we can take you back to your car, or there's another leatherback up at the inlet if you want to see another one. I said, is there a third option? They're like, what do you mean? I said, can I just stay here with Emerald? They're like, yeah, but you're going to have to walk home. I said, that's fine. So I spent literally an hour with Emerald watching her finish burying her nest, listening to her breathe, and then just sat peacefully by her while she crawled all the way back to the ocean. So I think for me, as someone who's worked, in Alaska, I've been around grizzly bears, I've been around marine mammals. I've had some amazing animal experiences in my lifetime. I've been very jaded that way. Swam with 14-foot tiger sharks, 16-foot great hammerheads. So I think this experience was epic on that level. And for me was that last bit of secret sauce that just added that extra story element to, it's funny because I think when I started here, part of my job is to meet with donors, and it's connecting those kind of stories to the donor community. And I think that was that last story I really needed in my toolkit for how to really get people to care about what we're doing. And I think that was awesome because I had the best time out with our research team, having that experience. And I actually had a better time with the research team left. And I was just me and Emerald, sharing a beach, having a date night. So it was pretty cool.
So beautiful. It was like when we watched the turtles in front of our building, nest and hatch.
Yeah.
And just the from beginning to end, the whole thing, and witnessing and being really in the entire cycle of this part of their life
Yeah.
is just priceless. Like to see them come out, do the whole nesting, go back in, and then the babies and the promo, you can hear me, I'm like, oh my God, they know which way to go.
Right.
Like how friggin' cool is that? I just want to ask you one more thing about senses. And because you mentioned it and I think about it, I did not know, and I think most people do not know about the sense of sound.
Mm-hmm.
And that is offered by Marinelife. And the first time I watched a loggerhead nesting, the sound part of it, the grunting and the exhaustion and the effort, and then grunts. We have grunts in the aquariums that actually communicate. That there's this incredible communication by sound, which shouldn't be a surprise because sharks, to your space, are very conscious of sound, I think.
Yep.
But can you just talk for a moment about that? And then I'm going to just give us where are you going next? Like what's happening that you want to share with us? Cause it's just so exciting. And then we'll be done.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, sound people don't think about it. I mean, I think it's funny because Jacques Cousteau's first book was called Silent World. I think that's actually the book that got my dad hooked on, wanting to become a scuba diver. And he actually ordered the first aqualung by mail to Omaha, Nebraska. And he taught himself how to dive in the lakes in Nebraska. Luckily, they weren't deep enough to get bent or hurt. But it's fun. It's just kind of funny that's because that's the last thing I think of is Silent World. There's a whole, it's a very different soundscape. It's not birds chirping. But there, certainly if you're in Hawaii, you're hearing whales frequently. Mm-hmm. As you mentioned, there are fish called grunts, and they get that name because when fishermen first start catching them and you go to take them off the hook, they're literally grunting at you like, okay, it's a threat response. Goliath groupers can, what I call boom for lack of a better term, but they just make a booming noise if they feel threatened.
Wow.
That night that I had with Emerald, I mean, having been with a leatherback, I'm pretty sure that's as close as I'm ever going to get to dinosaur noises. It's these loud roar, kind of deep inhalations. And then you can tell when she's at her end because she's just like, she blows out this huge breath of air. You can tell she's exhausted. You've got the flipper noise as she's slapping it on the sand. And then, one of my favorite things is when you're night diving, you hear all the clicking shrimp and those type of noises at night. So it really is a vibrant soundscape. It's just very different.
That's beautiful. And we'll find some good videos to post on the show notes because I can't wait to see them. That's really amazing. Beautiful. So tell us what's up next, where you're headed, what you love, and.
Yeah, I mean, it's, I think for us, we've really spent the last 2 years just refining our business model here. As I mentioned, we had the highest number of visitation that we've ever had. We also run the Juno Beach Pier. Mm-hmm. That's a great website. We have an underwater 360 degree camera, so we actually have a whole group of amateur fish enthusiasts that are like highlighting what species are under there.
Awesome.
I get to go in kind of covertly. They don't know who I am as a fish biologist and kind of comment as to what fish. But even just this morning, we had a bonnethead shark under the pier.
Awesome.
We've seen Goliath grouper, things like that. So, so to me, it's taking our campus and our expanded campus, which includes the pier, really refining that business model, making it an incredible visitor experience. Couple that with the donor experience because we have such an amazingly generous group of donors. We've become much more hands-on. If someone is a very high-level donor, we like to do, or potential high-level donor, very custom individual blue carpet tours, 45 minutes and out, get to see what we're about. Mm-hmm. We have a great event space, and I think early on people didn't quite understand why we're building an event space at Loggerhead. And it's really, number one, it helps keep free visitation. And,
Mm-hmm.
We need a complex group of revenue generating options. And this space works perfectly for that. So that's
it's
a big
spectacular.
Part of
I've been there to help teach about the aquariums during the weddings and the rehearsal dinners, and it's so where is life better than having that as your history for where you formed that bond of community, right?
I mean, the cool thing about the event space, it does bring people that wouldn't normally come to Loggerhead on a weekend. We're also trying to find more adult things. As I was in the community, I heard, oh yeah, I brought my kid there, or I bring my grandkids there. Like, okay, kids are not a prerequisite to come to Loggerhead. Yeah. There's a lot of learning activities. So I think we've gotten to the point where we've really kind of shored up our brand. We've spent a lot of time and energy in marketing. We've now got billboards on 95 and the Turnpike.
I saw. Yeah. So cool.
And then we're on the Bright Line. So really kind of, for me now, I think there's some smart growth that we need to do. There's some internal, we're in the middle of kind of renovating our welcome center, even though we just did a big expansion. There were some things we wanted to tweak in the welcome center. There's some things we want to tweak in our indoor space called One Ocean Hall. Not a lot of big change, but I think it's just, to me, it's taking that brand and executing it better. And I think for me, at the end of the day, it's trying to build our visitation and also very focused building our visitation by the underserved community. Because if we're going to be a free access facility, the goal of that is to expose people. So I think it's really looking at vehicles and methods. We do a lot of work with Title I schools in Palm Beach County. So I think that's an area where we're very strong already. But how do we do things? Maybe it's a gas card giveaway to cover the cost of gas to come to Loggerhead. Yeah. I think that's one of our roles in the community, dating back to our founder, Eleanor Fletcher, is exposure to marine life for those that can't afford it. And I think that's where we really want to see some growth.
Or don't know to prioritize it. Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Andy. It's been such a treat, such an honor. And I can't wait to get back in a couple of months down there to be on site and having these conversations. So thank you.
Absolutely. We look forward to having you back on campus.
This has been a production of BLI Studios, produced by me, Kai. Follow along with our other BLI produced shows at balancinglifesissues.com/podcast-BLI. Got an idea for the show? Email me, Kai, at balancinglifesissues.com. And don't forget to stay in touch with your host, Jessica, at jessica@winwinwinmindset.com. Anything else to add, Miles?
Yeah.